I brought it up with the Auditor General on the conference call for media about what was contained in your report, the anecdote you had from traveling with Craig James, where you suggested you're going to have to pay a lot in duties to bring things back to Canada, and he told you, in your words, that you didn't have to just do what he did, which is not pay duties, not declare. And when they had their chance, both Craig James and Gary Lenz, to refute what you had in your report, they were silent on that fact. When I contacted their lawyers by phone, by email, they did not respond to me. I did a story about that, about the non-payment that was alleged of customs duties, the non-declaration of purchases made before coming back to Canada. And after the story, again, silence from Craig James, silence from Gary Lenz, silence from their lawyers. And here we have this report where the Auditor General said that she didn't find anything that gave rise to a fraud allegation. I brought that up in the conference call, asked her that question, and she was clueless about that allegation. Low-hanging fruit. She didn't have to do a forensic audit. She just should have asked for someone in an office in the legislature just to double check that there were no receipts connected to these travels for any reimbursement that would then lead her down that road. This is, I think, very problematic of her investigation.
Yeah, I'm so surprised to hear that, and I guess I'm also disappointed to hear that we haven't heard anything from CBSA on that already. That is the Canada Border Security Agency. You know, it's especially troubling when we all know how long police investigations take. And police should be the first to say how their work can be facilitated by work of auditors, and especially forensic auditors. And I don't think we can say that we have been as helpful as we could. Certainly there's nothing in the Auditor General's report that, from my perspective, which would be helpful to the police, other than, again, it's absolutely remarkable that we would have a public entity such as the legislature and not have any policies. I think it would be interesting to see if there's anywhere else in the Western world, if there's any state in the United States, any province in Canada or the UK, Australia, New Zealand, throughout Europe, where somebody could find another place where this was the case. Certainly there would have been lots of examples or would be lots of examples in the third world. But for us to have to be in this situation, I mean, the other part of it is that happens here that's troubling to me is we are constantly hearing people refer to openness, transparency, accountability, and at the end of the day, you know, with all that's gone on at the Ledge, like we're still waiting for that. We're still waiting for the day when we can say, you know what, somebody's being held accountable here for what's gone on. And one would also think, I think the press has an obligation to do that. Like, the public relies on the press, you know, for information about what's going on. They rely on the press to get at what's going on behind the scenes, to dig. And, you know, of course, the media also expects us to provide comment. Well, my difficulty with all of that, over and over and over again, I will provide statements to the media, and they will exclude most of it. They excluded most of my written statement to the press, just on this last, as one example. They excluded the most important sentences in that media statement. And then wonder why I'm so worried about talking to them. It boggles me. I mean, I have no doubt again where all of this is going to land, because, as I've said before, I'm not able to say everything I know, but I do know where it's going. And there will be a day of accountability. The taxpayers can be assured of that. It's a rough ride right now. So certainly it's a rough ride for my family. It's the nonstop beating all of the time about, it's the pointing of the finger to the speaker, the big bad speaker. And I guess I would ask this too, when all of that happens, is can they identify one single thing that the speaker has done wrong? Is there something? Did the auditor find something I did wrong? Has anybody else got reason to confirm that I've done something wrong? Let's hear it. Let's get it out there. But that hasn't happened. And I'm hoping we can get past this set of circumstances we've had up until now, where I don't think I'm exaggerating to say that people have moved heaven and earth to thwart my every effort to get to the bottom of what's going on at the legislature at every turn. They've called it a witch hunt. They've called for it to stop. They've called me irrational. They've called me unstable. They have gone to great lengths to, I think it's fair to say, make stuff up about what's going on. For example, I think there was one media report that said, I'll let them escape my calling them out, but a media report by an editorial board that claimed that my chief of staff's site visits trip was an investigation of Mr. Lenz. And I'm wondering where they got that information from, because nothing could be further than the truth. They had to have made that up. And if somebody really thought it through, one would wonder, well, what on earth would site visits enable you to learn about anything to do with Mr. Lenz's behavior at the ledge? Again, it's troubling. At the end of the day, we have this audit, which turned out to be a disappointment. I'm not at all confident in further audits unless it's arranged by police. I think this really demonstrates why I shouldn't be confident. I know we are still within a matter of weeks. We're going to have the outcome of the Lepard investigation into the Sergeant at Arms.
That's the Police Act investigation.
The Police Act investigation. And then we will also have, because I will be demanding it, an IT audit. Now, the acting clerk has called for the same thing. I want to be sure that audit is truly independent, and I would like to have some say in what goes into the questions that are asked, because it's always about the questions. We don't want to be where we are right now, where the Auditor General says, well, that's not what I was looking at. So there's that. I still will be providing at some point a report on the whistleblowers. I'm reminded that it's really sad commentary how they've been ignored by the media and beat up, and have numerous of them have come forward to us and said, you know, it's like PTSD, you know, with what they've had to go through listening to what's on the news. So, you know, as I've said before, I want them to know they can take it to the bank. I will not rest until their stories get out and justice is done there. That's just a no-brainer. And there's a few other matters. There was the matter of an investigation into my signatures. I have that report from the expert, forensic expert, and at some point I'll be releasing that. So, you know, there's more to come, and I know what those reports are going to say. I just need to have a better way to get that out to the public in its full form. And I'm hoping that will be the case with never mind hoping. I will insist that it's the case with Lepard investigation, just as it was with McLaughlin. People want transparency, they want openness, full disclosure. They should not expect anything less.
And we're coming up on the first anniversary of the special prosecutors being appointed, and I've got a source telling me that Special Prosecutor David Butcher has in his hands reports on the investigation into the wood splitter and the investigation into the liquor purchases. So now there's at least 2 cases that are in David Butcher's hands for potential charge assessment. Of course, that takes time, but the police investigation, the most serious part of this, is moving forward.
Well, I'm not privy to that, but I do know this, that the police are as active as they've ever been, investigating one thing or another. In fact, so much so that when I think of criminal activity that I'm aware of, I've just made a decision to stop going to them because their hands are full. You know, we'll just have to have these things dealt with in another way. So, because, you know, what happens with police and prosecutors, you know, it takes so long to run its course through to getting to a prosecutor. And then prosecutors, you know, take so long to get it through a trial, if it goes to a trial, or get it through one kind of conclusion or another. I'm not optimistic about how fast all that's going to work. I might be optimistic about charges, but I'm also reminded the recent case of, you know, the wrongdoing in MLA John Martin's office by his constituency assistant, the alleged wrongdoing, I should say. That took a couple years just to get to the charge stage. So, you know, it's disturbing, really, how the wheels of justice move so slowly. This is not helpful to taxpayers either.
Mm-hmm. And then there's the other piece of the puzzle, perhaps the final piece of the puzzle, the one that could be a legacy for decades to come. The NDP promised it in the throne speech of adding the legislature to the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, which would solve a lot of questions that people have, that would allow people to have a way to shine a light at the legislature and get the numbers and facts that they have a right to see. At the same time, it would also help keep IT systems more secure and keep privacy there and not allow information to go missing. And if information does go missing, there would be traceable. That law, the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy law, we're still waiting for that. There is the session opening up pretty soon, and hoping the NDP will will tell us what its roadmap is going forward and won't delay any longer.
Yeah, I think you've articulated that very well. Like, that is definitely one of the things that I asked for from the get-go. We need access of the ombudsperson. We need merit systems in place for employees. These things aren't there right now. And the whole freedom of information issue. But again, it comes down to we can say we have legislation to enable people to have access, but that's only as good as the hardware. If you have a computer system that doesn't allow you to facilitate, as you say, like tracking and getting back to, what it is you want to see, that's a problem. So, and then of course, financial controls. Even on the matter of financial controls, a cleverly deceptive person can even find a way around policy. So it requires more than that. It requires an eagle eye. It requires people to be digging. And my point would be is that since I've started this thing, at every turn people have said, quit digging. Quit digging. You're wrong. You're wrong in the manner you did it. And it's disheartening. It's for taxpayers. Boy, are they getting cheated. They are hardly well served. And I wish it could be different, but lots has to happen. I think before I leave, and I know there's lots of people who would hope that was yesterday, and if I wasn't so concerned about getting all of this fixed, I would agree with them. But I do want to see it through to legislative change. And I'm hoping that can happen in the next year. I know these other investigations will be complete within a year. It'll all be finished in a year, other than the fullness of what the RCMP is doing. Yeah, the one thing that I'm comforted by is just from what I've seen and the amount of activity that the police seem to be involved in, and they're insistent that on everything be done to so exactingly, like crossing every T, dotting every I process. That's comforting to me, because I know that in most criminal investigations, never mind most, all, at the end of the day, the matter is not about what crime has been committed. The matter is always about, well, how did the police come to this conclusion? How did they do their work? So, people say that a trial is 95% about police behavior and 5% about a criminal's behavior. That it's not far from the truth. So I'm happy, and I think we're extraordinarily fortunate to have the prosecutors we have. They are extraordinarily competent prosecutors, and we'll just have to see where all that goes. And because they're so careful, this is the reason it's taking so much time.
Okay, anything else you'd like to add?
I guess one thing, and I mean, I don't want it, I'm not saying this simply because you're here, but I do want to say how grateful I am to the people I regard as investigative reporters like yourself. And I think that's what we need more of. I don't know whose fault that is that we don't, but, I would certainly gratified by people like Dermot Travis and his work that he tries to do. I'm certainly gratified by John Woodward's CTV efforts to do investigative reporting, and I know you do, and that's the bulk of what you do. I think that's what the taxpayers need more than anything. Is that, like, have somebody who's going to not just be looking for a 30-second soundbite, but dig, get to the bottom of it, and then once again I come back, if the name of the game is transparency, openness, accountability, don't ever expect to get that on a 30-second soundbite. And don't ever expect to get that when somebody's trying to cram something in where there's opportunities for misleading information by omission.